So our next question is on the social issue, and this one will go to the Republicans first. What role should the federal government play in regulating marriage licenses? Does the federal government have a responsibility to defend traditional marriage, open marriage up to the LGBT community, or should it have no role whatsoever in this policy area as a federal policy?
Thank you very much for this question. Tonight I'm going to be defending the contention that marriage is an institution that is by definition a union between one man and one woman. I also believe that the federal government is charged with the responsibility of defending traditional marriage. And it's important for us to note that Western civilization was built upon three fundamental institutions: marriage, which then led to the nuclear family, government, and church. Marriage is the most fundamental of the three institutions, as there can be no government or church without a steady proliferation of magnanimous people to run and contribute to these institutions. A multitude of social science research demonstrates that the nuclear family, comprising of one mother, one father, and offspring, as opposed to the revisionist way that people are now trying to say that gay couples now make up a nuclear family, that's sociologically illiterate. But anyway, is still the best way to create well-adjusted children. The essential principle of marriage is that it's an institution to normalize and regulate the parental responsibilities that arise at the point of procreation. Due to the fact that procreation is inextricably wedded to the definition of marriage, where procreation is impossible in principle, marriage is both categorically irrelevant and demonstrably absurd. As ably articulated by Ambassador Dr. Alan Keyes in a 2004 debate with Barack Obama, and I quote, "If you say that marriage can be understood in principle apart from procreation, you have changed its definition as in fact to destroy the necessity for the institution in the first place, since the only reason marriage has existed in human societies and civilizations is to regulate from a social point of view the obligations, responsibilities attendant upon procreation." So when you start playing games in this way, you are actually acting as if the institution has no basis independent of your own arbitrary whim, end quote. Given this inarguable position, meshed with the fact that marriage is indeed both a social union and a legal contract, the federal government is charged with the responsibility of respecting and upholding marriage as an institution between one man and one woman. If marriage can be so whimsically and capriciously tampered with to allow one man to marry another man or a woman to marry another woman, what logical argument can be offered to reject the marital demands of polygamists and people looking to engage in incestuous relationships? This indeed is a slippery slope. Unsurprisingly, there is historical and legal precedent for the recognition of marriage as an institution between one man and one woman. Recognizing the critical importance of traditional marriage, in 1885, the Supreme Court of the United States, in Murphy versus Ramsey, made the respect for marriage between one man and one woman a requirement to entering the union. The court argued, and I quote, "The life of the state rests on the basis of the idea of the family as consistent in and springing from the union for life of one man and one woman in the holy estate of matrimony. The surest foundation of all that is stable and noble in our civilization, the best guarantee of the reverent morality, which is the source of all beneficent programs, social and political improvement," end quote. As any person with a passing familiarity with logic would understand, the proliferation of traditional marriage adds upright people to society, whereas the proliferation of homosexual marriage will inevitably detract from society, given the inherent implausibility of homosexual procreation.
I would like to apologize for his comments if they offended anybody from the LGBTQ community. Marriage is a legal term. It's legally binding with legal ramifications, and it was my understanding that government was created to protect the rights of the governed. Marriage has been defended in the past by the government and should be in the future when referring to the LGBTQ class. Because religion would like to take back ownership of the term now is of little concern, and should be of little concern to everybody in this room. Those of the LGBTQ community are taxpayers, registered voters, civic leaders, and the same as everybody else. Why should they be ignored? The LGBT community wants the same rights given to every other citizen without prerequisites. The Republicans brought up a slippery slope of incest and polygamy, but what about divorces and infidelity, things that are a direct affront to marriage? I feel they happen, and the government does nothing to say that those people can't marry as well. And I'd also like to ask where you got your information that the best way to raise a child was in a heterosexual marriage. I don't know where you got that information, and I don't believe that's valid. Marriage, well, I mean, government is the head of state, not the head of church. There is a definition, a legal definition of marriage, and it has changed throughout time, as well as many amendments and many things that Congress has put forth. It's changed with time, and it's time for this to change. So.
Okay, well, there's a lot there. First of all, an apology to the LGBT community is not an argument. That's not a refutation of any of my points. That's an appeal to emotion. Let me just put that out there. And who mentioned anything about religion in this particular discussion? I mentioned absolutely nothing about religion, except to tell you that the church is one of the fundamental institutions of civilization, which is an inarguable fact. But I did not say that the church has anything to do with the institution of marriage. That's not an argument I made. That's not an argument I made. You raised the point of divorcees and infidelity. Yes, we understand that there are problems with marriage, but you need to present an argument to show us why gay marriage would add anything good to marriage. You haven't presented that argument, except that you said vaguely that the laws need to change. Yes, but you need to present arguments for these things. You haven't done that. And you said you wanted to know who has said that the nuclear family is the best way to raise children. I just recommend reading any social science research in the academic literature, and that is demonstrably clear. That is a fact, that a mother and a father in a nuclear family and a stable home is the best way to raise children that are upstanding and magnanimous. So, and also to your point about infidelity, as cited by Andrew Sullivan, who is a gay man himself, he said that 50% of gays are not monogamous. So how would adding them to the marriage toll actually, what would that do to the divorce rate? It would make it higher. Yes, we understand that there are problems with traditional marriage. Yes, we understand that there are problems with infidelity, but you need to present an argument as to what valid good gay marriage would add to society. You haven't done that except saying vaguely the laws need to change. Thank you.
I believe we live in a free society. Freedom to choose where you work, freedom to choose where you live, freedom to choose freedom to choose who you love, and most importantly, freedom to choose where you marry. And I think advocating for gay marriage is part of that. And I think if we've seen by our government, there has been several historical court cases that have affirmed and are pushing towards this choice. If we look at Lawrence versus Texas in 2003, much later than 1885, it affirmed the right of consenting males to have sexual activity and privacy. If we look at Loving versus Virginia, it ended race-based marriage segregation in 1967, my apologies. But we can see by these two court cases that in fact that there has been increasing push by our government to in fact advocate for same-sex marriage. And it should be something that we push for, because I think it goes along with our fundamental freedoms.